Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 7 of Pajamas and Pearls, the magic of unfiltered conversations and pearls of wisdom. My name is Celine, and I'm the founder of Love Yourself Project. I'm originally from Vancouver, Canada, and now living in Alicante, Spain, where our current temperature is sitting at 29 degrees, but still requires nightgowns. How about you, May? Where are you at today?
Hi, everyone. I'm actually in Wales at the moment, but I live in Spain. I'm based in the south of Spain, close to Marbella, but I spend 7 or 8 weeks back in Wales in the summer. So it's around 20 degrees here at the moment, but it's been very hot recently. Yeah. I'm looking forward to heading back to Spain on Tuesday.
Great. And how about you, Catherina?
I'm Katrina. I live in Hemel Hempstead, but before I lived 3 years in Spain, in Valencia, and permanently moved back to England now because of having a granddaughter, and my husband retired and we decided to go back to England. I'm a textile artist, mixed media and textile, and I'm also guide groups of people with meditation together with my husband. So
lovely. And Lynda.
Hi everyone. Yes, I'm also living in Spain, on Spain's Costa Blanca, where it's in the early 30s, mid 30s today, and about 22 at night. So still lovely and warm. And I'm pleased to introduce today's topic, which is the only constant is change. How do we cope with it, and how do we embrace it? My early career, I was confronted with lots of change when I joined the UK diplomatic service, and every few years I was changing location, changing job, being confronted with a new language, culture, homesickness, and I put all of that into a book called Brains at the Border, which talks about the effects, psychological and emotional effects of that sort of change on the expat living overseas for the first time in particular. And I noticed as well, when I was back in the UK earlier in the summer, Psychology's magazine has a big spread inside the magazine, how to cope with change. So it's obviously the topic of the moment. Yeah. And of course, it doesn't matter whether you're a serial expat nomad, like many of us are. You know, Catherine, you're from Holland originally, and Canada, Wales, we're all moving around the globe. It doesn't matter, life is full of change, right from the very start of your life to the end. So it can be moving house, it can be getting married, it can be having a child for the first time, getting used to a new boss, a new job, losing a job. And there's so much of a roller coaster that we all have to learn how to ride. So many people, though, are really scared of change. They just do not like going out of their comfort zone, which is a real shame, because it's a natural reaction and a response to change, to be a little bit nervous and anxious. It's the not knowing how life's going to be afterwards. And that can be whether we've chosen it, whether we've chosen to get married or have a child. We never quite know how we're going to feel until we've gone through that. And it may be quite a shock. And we can be even more resistant when that change is forced upon us. I know when I worked in change management, for example, you know, it was very challenging to ask people in the workforce to embrace the changes that were needed for the organization, because people get very much into habitual ways of doing things, and those habits are very hard to change for a lot of people. So yeah, it's inevitable throughout our life. And we spoke last time, May, when you led the last episode on grief, and it kind of ties in, but it's all about finding ways to soothe yourself and get back into balance. I think you probably agree with your counseling approach as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from what you said, it's the unknown for people, isn't it? I think humanly we like to stay in our comfort zone. We don't like change, we don't like to not know what's happening. But I absolutely love change, and I always think change shakes us up to where we're meant to be. And it's the only permanent thing is change. Everything is changing, as you said, all the time. But we're trying to stop things that we can't stop from changing. And that's what causes resistance and the stress.
Mm. And of course, we've all had loads of change over the last few years, what with the COVID, lockdowns, change to working from home, for example, climate change, dealing with natural disasters and other security incidents as well. Mm-hmm. What about you, Catharina?
Yeah, I've made many changes in my life, and I've I practiced meditation for a very long time on a daily basis, and I know that when I go inside, it helps to, because there is some permanence inside you, but it's nothing to do with the outside world, and that's I think that's maybe that's what people are looking for, something which is permanent, and they put it in the outside, because if you don't know the permanence in yourself, then you're gonna put it into your habits and family and jobs, and then you get constantly bombarded with this change. And then, to me, when you resist it, that's when the problems start. That's when you start, being anxious, getting ill, when you keep resisting it. But when you look at nature, everything is changing all the time. If we not even look at our own lives, then, and you look just at nature, we got the seasons, things come and go. And if we learn more to be in harmony with the nature, look at nature as a reflection, I think that helps to embrace change, to embrace it.
Absolutely. I totally agree with the seasonal idea, because our whole lifespan is seasons. We have spring, summer, autumn, winter of our lives, and the same with any other aspect, whether it be a job, for example. When we're a trainee or an apprentice, that's the spring, and then we get into our stride in the summer, and then perhaps we go up the promotion ladder and we're in the autumn. So when we're then looking to wind down and perhaps retire, everything is cyclical in that way, isn't it? And I love what you say about being grounded in yourself with your meditation, any spiritual practice, mindfulness, and also knowing what you want out of life. So people get thrown and are bobbing along on the water and just really get swept away. Whereas if you really think about what you want out of life, in all aspects of life, whether it be your relationships, your career, finances, your spirituality, or just really what you want to experience in life. And other aspects that you can think of, your health, for example, and really find out what your own goals are and what your own values are. Because there's a saying that someone came up with that I thought was perfect: if you don't know what you stand for, you're likely to fall for anything. So if something happens unexpectedly, for example, my daughter suddenly was given a job to the United States, so she left a couple of weeks ago, and people are saying, how are you coping? Well, I'm more able to roll with the changes, because like you, Catharina, I meditate, and I work with healing techniques like Reiki, and some new techniques called the body code and emotion code, which enable me to work on myself as well, to release emotions and stay healthy, keep my immune system up, be resilient. But for other people, it might just be walking in nature or working with animals and feeling that healing from the natural world as well.
I think also I'm thinking back of when I raised my two children, that John and I on purpose would change things on a daily basis. For example, there was a shortcut with a car to go to school. On purpose, I sometimes took along with it, and then there was panic. Mom, you go wrong. You go to, you know, and things like sitting at the table, you know, automatically we choose our own seat. But we with the children, you know, we changed it. Oh, you're sitting in my chair. Who says that that's my chair? And it starts from early on, you know, to keep your children. Well, children in itself, they like you know, discovering things, and but when you try to settle those patterns and habits, they become comfortable in there, and then they become scared of change. So you can, right from the start, you can help children, but yeah, you have to realize that for yourself first, of course, the importance of embracing change and seeing things as an adventure, you know, and because if it is an adventure, if you don't know what's coming around the corner, it could be something really nice, you know, and or it can, you know, it can be anything, you know. Why would it be something which is scary or which is upsetting? You know, that's all our imagination making it scary and stuff. But it's if you just go with the flow and you embrace whatever comes, then life gets more exciting. You know, I think it's terribly boring when I see how some people are stuck in their habits and patterns. Scared for change, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I agree with you both, though. It's like staying centered and grounded, isn't it? So then when something happens, we don't get so rocked or knocked off balance. So for me, for example, I like to have a structure to my day where usually in Spain, I go to the beach. In the morning, I watch the sunrise, go to the gym. But actually, I do like that element of not planning my day as well, especially on the weekends. I like to sit on the beach and go, okay, what shall I do today? Shall I go for a walk? Shall I go on the bus to somewhere? And sometimes it's that unknown. And as you said, Katerina, it's really exciting because when I haven't got a fixed plan of I do this every Saturday, this every Sunday, it gets really boring. Then I kind of, you know, meet people or I find out about an event, and then my weekend goes, I just go with the flow all weekend and I love it.
I mean, some people have, sorry, Katerina, go ahead.
You feel more alive, I think, you know, when you embrace that, you feel much more invigorated and alive, and life gets more exciting, you know, and
absolutely. I was just saying earlier on, before we started the session here, that I was working away last week in a different part of Spain with complete strangers. There were about 30 of us. And it was a summer camp for Spanish who were learning English. And so it was half native speakers and half Spaniards. Fantastic group of people. And we all got to know each other through icebreakers and the warm-up sessions within minutes, really, and hours. And we've made friends for life. But such interesting people, different parts of the English-speaking world, America, Australia, South Africa, the UK, all different parts of Spain. And it was an absolutely fabulous experience. And yet there are other people I know who probably, because they weren't brought up in the way that you raised your children, Katerina, and to a certain extent, mine were raised by default because we were traveling around the world. They didn't have that resilience. And so anything that's outside their immediate comfort zone, they would be absolutely terrified of walking into a room with 30 strangers. Which is such a shame, because I feel enriched by the experience, and I've got a whole new bunch of people.
When we got this opportunity for John, you know, to get his job in Spain, which, you know, it was only 3 years, but we jumped at it because it was an opportunity to, wow, the whole world, anything else could happen after that, you know, because we thought maybe we're gonna retire permanently in Spain, and this would be an option to look if that's an option for us. And we decided, you know, not to do that, but you know, we're now in the process of getting rid of stuff in the house and, you know, go and move to Milton Keynes, you know, and then live with John's brother. You know, we told him to come and leave Cornwall, and you know, we go in a little threesome community, you know. So you know, all kinds of things happen when you're open for it, you know, when you don't hold on to what you're familiar with.
And that actually reminds me of when before COVID happened, I spent 4 years in Asia and I didn't have a plan. I only had a 3-month plan at a time for just having the visa, say in Thailand, but I never knew where I was going to be, 3 months from there. So I would just really go with the flow. And I was never more excited than stepping off a plane, say or stepping off the train in Hanoi in Vietnam. And I didn't know where I was going, but I was really excited by being in a new place, a new experience. And I didn't have to have it all planned out. I mean, I might have had the first night accommodation booked, but after that, I just kind of based myself somewhere and got to know people, explored. And that was really exciting rather than booking a tour, for example, for 3 weeks where, it was all planned out for me every day. So when I used to talk to people, they used to say, so you don't feel scared that you don't have a permanent place to live or a permanent plan. And it was just amazing just to have that free spirit life and just like go with the flow. I knew I'd always be okay and, find somewhere to live and I could just choose, okay, where shall I go next? And, also altogether, I've been to 30 countries and lived in 6. Wow. And every place has just been exciting and amazing in its own way. And, I'm back here in Wales now, and there's so many people, they haven't traveled, which is, maybe their choice and they don't want to. So that's fine. But for me, I couldn't imagine it. And, the experiences I've had and feeling invigorated, as we've said, it's enriched me in so many ways.
Absolutely, May. And that's exactly one of my themes in my book. That there's that buzz when you arrive in a new place. And I went, my first full overseas posting was to Japan, which was, when you're in your early 20s, it's just phenomenal. And so I toured around Japan and the Far East, Southeast Asia, and jobs took me to India and Pakistan, to West Africa, to Central America, South America, and it was absolutely fabulous. And there's nothing like going to a brand new place and feeling like you're 5 years old and everything's just a wonder to be explored. I mean, it really fires me up. But other people, it would terrify them to be traveling on their own in that way.
So it's wonderful listening to all of this talk about change and travel as a single person. But how would you recommend managing it if you're with a partner and the partner perhaps doesn't want to travel and explore? How does that work?
You just go on your own and tell your partner they're staying at home. End of story.
Option 1. What's option 2?
It's difficult to imagine, because I got a partner who's the same as me in that sense. We both like change and adventure. So it's difficult to imagine to be with a partner who's not like that.
Well, I did find someone who was a traveler like me, and we married and had 2 children. And the problem came because we were all going in different directions. So, we had 2 adult careers that were potentially pulling us apart, and 2 children with a 6-year age gap that had different needs as well, which is why we decided to come as a family to Spain and regroup, and it was a compromise, really. We were still outside of the UK. We had opportunities for our children to become multilingual, and we could still travel. But you do have to compromise if you're more than one person. That is for sure. That's for sure. And finding a like-minded person is not always that easy to share things like international travel, or even, I don't know, if you're into extreme sports, or if you're heavily into a particular niche in music or something, you want someone to share with you. I guess compromise sometimes has to be the name of the game.
Because recently, since we've moved to Alicante, we've met, I'm going to say, at least 4 new couples, each of whom have very separate interests. And they really do things apart that my husband and I were chatting and going, why are they even married? They use their flat as like the place where they meet and shower and sleep. But the rest of the entire day, they're off doing something else. And the only time they're together could be once a week, if that, like at a group lunch or group dinner. So not even on a date night. So that for me is surprising.
that is another issue, especially down on the costas, where there is a big retirement community. And very often we find that couples have spent their whole working life really not spending much time together. You know, they've got up early in the morning, they've both gone out to different careers or different places of work, or one's been at home raising children, looking up, taking care of the domestic stuff. And they're not actually seeing much of each other during the average week at all. And so they may have gone out for dinner or gone to the movies or something like that, gone shopping, or maybe shared a holiday. But the most time they were actually living two different lives, essentially. Yeah. But when they retire together in one house with one car and they're with each other 24/7, that can be quite a challenge too, that big change. That is a big adjustment. And that's quite a thing down here too. So maybe they're just, the couple you're talking about, maybe they're just trying to adjust to this business of being together, and it's just a habit of each going their own separate way during the day.
Yeah, because I certainly didn't notice it as much in Valencia. It was just since moving here, and I thought, wow.
Yeah. Are they all retired couples, Celine? Are they all retired?
Yes. Yeah, they're all retired. Yeah. So what I found interesting from this conversation is that really, if you start from a very young age, like Katrina was doing with her children, for example, something simple like switching seats of where you would normally sit at the dinner table, that would automatically seem to help even children going to school. You know, when they start school, usually they're afraid. So nursery school, I get it because they're so little. But when they start to move off to elementary school and high school, but maybe it's a different school than where their other classmates are going to, that there's a lot of fear that sets in, and this seems to happen throughout their life. So do you think that those same people are then conditioned to also be afraid of success because they're afraid of change? Because success means big changes, right?
It can do, yes. I don't know. I think when you're going back to the children, I found with mine, because we were constantly moving at the same time, to sort of counterbalance them feeling the fear and doing it anyway type of change, to have at least a few things that were constant for them other than the change. For example, familiar things always taken in the suitcase to put out in the next place we were staying, for example. So there was something tangible that they could see that was not changing too much. And if we tended to eat, for example, at 7, we still ate at 7 wherever we were, you know, so that there was still something familiar. Because
we did the same.
And I also used to do that on my travels. I didn't realize why I was doing it, but I used to always have some little familiar personal things, like a dream catcher or a little Buddha statue. So wherever I went to, because when you're traveling, you're not going to ship everything. You know, it was always rented places, so you're not going to ship furniture and things with you, but I always had little personal things. So yeah, it's interesting you said that.
Yeah. And wherever I moved to, I always still try and engage in the things that I like to do, whether that to soothe myself, whether that be going to do my Tai Chi, having a massage or reflexology, just going for a walk by the beach or in the mountains, wherever I am, but doing those familiar things as well, so that it's not a complete change from suddenly, you know, normally sitting on a beach to going on a marathon run. I mean, you just wouldn't do that. You know, keep to the things that suit you, really, wherever you can.
The reason I was asking about this is it seems that a lot of young people are really struggling with changes, and it's causing a lot of mental health issues. So I'm trying to figure a way of, I guess in my own mind, is to accept how this is all happening all around the world, because it's not a culture thing. It doesn't seem that way anymore.
No, I think over the last 20 years or more, perhaps, there's been a gradual creep into keeping our children so protected that it's making them fearful.
Yeah.
You know, when I was a child, we used to go to the local playgrounds, you go into town, kids could go out on their bicycles all day, without a mobile phone, without anyone checking on you. You had to learn, you got into bumps and scrapes, you fell down. Whereas now there are so many child protection measures in place officially. For example, at school, if the child falls down, you know, a teacher can't cuddle them in case it's inappropriate touching.
Oh my.
So,
Yeah.
It's
very serious.
Parents are not letting their children out of their sight in case there's a paedophile down the road, you know, or there's too much traffic to let them out on their bikes. They've got devices that they're locked onto, and that's programming them in certain ways with their video games and being constantly in touch with other people, maybe not seeing people face to face, maybe just talking to people online, particularly teenagers. When my son was at school here in Murcia, when he was a teenager, and it was a bilingual school, an international school, and the head teacher said that she'd really noticed over the last 5 to 10 years, when new kids came, they could not socialize in the same way as they used to before, because they'd only been used to meeting people online, they'd chat to their schoolmates online. So to actually know how to bond with people, they'd really lost that skill. It had never.
And I think the problems of that will become worse, you know, as people are so glued to their phones and their games and and so they're not getting outside to do the exercise. For really tiny children, there are babies who, when people took their masks off, were terrified to see people's faces. They'd never seen that before, you know. You don't touch anybody in case you pass on COVID. Don't take your mask off. So all these children suddenly brought up, that was all they'd known, was seeing people in masks. It was very scary for the tiny ones. Again, for teenagers, when I was 14, I went to work. You know, I had a Saturday job. So I had to learn responsibility. I had to learn how to deal with customers in the shop, learn how to handle money, responsibility. But for a lot of just the way the employment situation's changed, there are a lot of things that are not open for teenagers to do anymore, to get a little bit of adult responsibility while they're still at school. And people are staying at home longer. So whereas my generation, perhaps we would have left home by the time we were 18 or at least 20, 21, kids are staying at home now until they're 30 with mum doing their laundry, and they're cushioned. They're not in the hurly-burly of this life, and it's difficult to cope if you're not used to it. That's my opinion anyway. I was thinking, because we got a friend living here with us as well, who was separated from his wife and now divorced. So he looked after our house whilst we were living in Spain, but he's still here because he had a complete mental breakdown. So he, he's getting himself back together, but he got a 6-year-old son who is moving between 2 houses, our house and his mum's house. So, and that, of course, when we came back from Spain, that, the whole energy and everything changed. And I don't know if you're familiar with Bach flower remedies, but we use them a lot. And there is one particular remedy called walnut, which facilitate change. So our friend, he now puts drops of walnuts into a glass of water. He don't tell his son, and it really makes a huge difference. So look into Bach flower remedies, because we've used them with our children as well a lot, and we use it for ourselves. But it is very significant change. You can see how he's coping better. With all the different changes. There's still difficulties because his mom is completely different than his dad, so in this whole torn in between, which is difficult. But yeah, it's something that's to support, in support of change. You can use Bach flower remedies, which in my opinion, is quite good. And there must be more things we can do, to support change. Do you have any more ideas on that, Lynda and Mei?
Well, I personally, love alternative remedies and treatments. I mean, as I said at the start, I now work with two energy healing techniques called the body code and the emotion code. And they were developed by a holistic practitioner in the United States. And he's now got nearly 10,000 of us practitioners working worldwide. And it's a very gentle technique. It's quite difficult to explain in a nutshell. You have to really see it and experience it to understand it. But by the use of simple muscle testing, the practitioner gets answers from the client's subconscious. And the premise is that this intelligence that runs our whole body, whether it be our circulation system, our glands, our skeletal system, our emotions, the reactions that go on in the body, our subconscious knows exactly what's going on. That intelligence knows exactly. So by getting yes or no answers and using a decoding system, we can drill down and find out what the root cause of the problem is. And this is where it gets really interesting, because although, we've been talking about what causes this fear in children, why do people find it hard to cope with social anxiety or whatever, there are those obvious things. But if someone's really got an issue and still can't get to the bottom of it, and talk therapy hasn't helped and so on and so forth, these techniques can really help, because it can even uncover things that have been absorbed from other people, either from people you've lived with or worked with, shared experiences with. You've absorbed their energy as well. It can be inherited. So it can be something you've inherited from your mother in the womb, or come down in your DNA from ancestors, and it can go back generations, and you have absolutely no idea where this depression is coming from, and it's something that's been inherited. And it could be that there is a physical symptom that is related to associated imbalances in the energy field, whether that be emotions or mental patterns. And once that is all released, and it's all released by the use of magnets along the central meridian line, as used in Chinese medicine, once it's released, it dissipates, and that calms everything down. It doesn't come back. So if you identify, for example, an emotion of anxiety that's related to migraine headaches, and that anxiety is released, then you do start to see the symptoms improve. That's it in a nutshell. But there are also, and that can be used with even small children, because the practitioner or a parent can act as a proxy for the child. You don't necessarily even have to have the child physically being treated with the magnets. So it's a fantastic system, and I wouldn't have believed it myself until I started working with it, and trust me, it absolutely works. And it can work over the internet as well. So if anybody's interested in that, send me an email, and always happy to give people a free demonstration, because as I say, it's not so easy to explain, but once people have experienced it, they appreciate what it does.
And that's actually going to be one of our episodes for Love Yourself project. Aside from doing the Meet the Author about Lynda's book, we're also going to do a little demonstration on what that's all about. So Mei, in your experience, how would you encourage the average person who perhaps is feeling this type of anxiety about change? How would you encourage them to look at other methodologies of healing other than popping a pill or, going to the doctor, like a regular doctor for something?
Yeah. And it's actually, I can relate to, Lynda, what you talked about, and that sounds really interesting. And I'd love to find out myself about that more. And it's actually, as you said, finding out where people's fears come from, and it's usually from our younger years, from when we're born or even before, and we take it all on from family programming, the conditioning. And like I would, we do a little bit of talking, find out where people's fears come from, but also looking at the steps of change as well, because change is not just a one thing, but it's looking at where they're stuck with the change, what they're afraid of. We can go through a healing crisis, or the body responds with physical symptoms, and looking at these things. And, I would use some techniques like EFT, the emotional freedom technique, which is like acupuncture without the needles. You tap in on certain points of the body. If we have any limiting beliefs, I use Byron Katie's work where we, just go through the process of inquiry. I don't know if anybody's heard of her work or familiar with her work. And, looking at, and use a lot of meditation and visualizations and, just exploring the change and what it means to people.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. And using energy healing Reiki as well. I, incorporate that into my work. And yeah.
So what will be great is it sounds like there's a lot of resources available in terms of dealing with change. So if you ladies can send it my way, and I'll add it to a specific page on the Love Your Project website, where we can provide these types of resources and links to our audience, that would be phenomenal.
Yeah, and just so people realize, I know we can be scared of change, as we've talked about, but change can be exciting as well when we start to embrace it and not limit ourselves. It's amazing the opportunities that come and doors open up, and when we step, as they say, when we step outside our comfort zone, that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So one final thing is, how do people deal with the negativity that comes with change? So what I mean by that is, as an example, we moved to Alicante literally within less than 30 days from the time we put it out there that we needed to find a new place, to the time that we found a new place, to the time we packed and physically moved. And everybody around us was saying, why are you moving? What happened? And it was like, instead of saying, oh, yay, you found a great new place, I actually only had maybe two people that were more positive about the move. And it wasn't just because, they were going to miss us. It wasn't about, oh, we're going to miss you. It was like, why are you moving? Why was it so sudden? It was like something bad happened. So why do you think that is what occurs first in people's minds when you talk about change? For example, like Lynda and your daughter getting this fabulous opportunity in the US.
Yeah, and people say, oh, how are you going to cope? Because I think it's just the way society as a whole, maybe we're being programmed. When we watch the news, it's all negative. You very rarely have a good news story unless it's about a rescued dog tucked in right at the end. It's all the drama first and foremost, ignoring all the wonderful things that are going on in the world. And perhaps we've been conditioned somehow, some way to focus on the negative first, and when I've been dealing with employees and change in the workforce and asking for brainstorming ideas, and they all come up with what they don't want to do, what they don't like. And it's like, hang on a minute, take the piece of paper, write on this side what you don't want. Now, instead of saying that, what do you want? Okay, so it's the same as when we're educating children. The brain doesn't sort of understand the do not. So instead of saying don't run, you say please walk, because they hear is the run, so they keep on running. So if you say people say things like, I haven't got any friends, or change it around and be a bit more positive and say, okay, well, I love making new friends. It's more positive. It's a different take on the thing. So it's how you frame everything, really. For a lot of people.
Yeah, and I do use that a lot in my work as well, the reframing, isn't it? Because people are focusing on the negative rather than looking at what the positives are.
Yeah.
And I think, Celine, is what you were saying as well. I think sometimes people, like, if we're spontaneous, they feel like if we make a change, we need to plan for weeks and months to do something, where sometimes change can happen quite quickly, like in your experience, or I might decide in a week's time that I want to go somewhere else to live, or, it's kind of, sometimes we can be spontaneous, but I think generally people would plan these things and maybe never even do them. So they wish that they could be that spontaneous maybe and just go for it and do it.
And I think a lot of people perhaps don't believe that things are possible for them, or they say things like, I mean, the top therapist Marissa here says, you know, people say, oh, it's yes, but it's not available to me. They have this belief system that they're not worthy, they're not lovable, and it's not available to me. And that is something you have to change when you're working with people and trying to get them to change their way of thinking about things.
And that
people are very, you know, almost like programmed to always start with the negative, isn't it? It's seldom that people come with a positive approach to life. We do quite a lot of affirmations, you know, very inspired by Louisa Hay, and take it into our meditation. And it's all about reframing as well, you know, how you think, you know, and having a positive way of being is much more affirmative, you know, than this continuously, you know, we are not kind to ourselves with being so negative, isn't it? And keep reinforcing, oh, I can't do this, or it's not for me, or you know, I don't deserve this. And it's something which is very, and it starts with a young child, you know. I think you know, when I remember how I was raised, you know, with my parents and John with his parents, everything was always negative, and there was always a threat of something bad would happen, or you will get punished, or, you know, it wasn't like embracing this, wow, you know, this world. When I look at my little granddaughter, she is only, how old is she now? She's 15 weeks, you know, and you can already see this desire to stand, for example. She likes standing on you, you know, she doesn't like sitting, or she doesn't like to being faced this way. She wants to face out into the world. She starts crying when you hold her like that, you know, and not the very first weeks, but she really wants to engage with the world. And I think we very often kill that somehow by our own negative habits. I think,
well, I remember when I was a teenager and coming up to leave school, and I was going for the interview for the Foreign Office, and I was told by the careers advisor, oh, but people of your background don't normally get in, you know, and advised almost to us, you know, set you up for failure before you even, and you know, to my amazement, I got in the first time. But if you listen, you have to learn to not listen to people's negativity. And if you really want to go for something, believe that you can. And I have this saying, you know, failure is not an option. And failure, if something goes wrong, it's not failure. You don't, with your little granddaughter, when she's trying to walk, you won't say the moment she falls down, oh, that's it, she'll never be a walker, she's hopeless, because you get up and you try and continue. So a failure is just feedback, if you like, you know. Well, okay, that didn't work for me, I know that that's not the area, we move on somewhere else. But so many people just feel it's just an absolute disaster, or that they're trapped in a job, in a 9-to-5, they've got no skill, whereas other people maybe would take a chance and say, right, okay, I'll just quit that job, I've got the money in my pocket, I'll start again somewhere else. Other people would simply be too fearful and negative, thinking, well, I'll never find anything else, and just stay there. And what a shame, because you're not achieving your potential and having a fulfilled life.
Exactly.
So really, one of the main things about change is understanding the mindset and learning how to do that little switch, because it doesn't seem like it's a big switch, but for many people, they forget. You just have to think things a little differently.
And so many people don't like feeling the negative emotions, like being a bit nervous or anxious, or a little bit sad about something. But at the same time, if you don't feel those, how are you going to know what it's like when you get the joy and happiness? And everything's that seesaw. So you know, yes, when you're going to a new place, yes, you can be a little bit apprehensive about the long flight, you can be a little bit defensive in that you want to protect yourself, you know, against strangers and all this sort of thing. or you can be worried about how you're going to set up your new home. But the counterweight of that is that when you do succeed, it's such a thrill, and you feel overjoyed, and you feel enriched and stimulated. But it's so many people are just not willing to feel the negative in order to feel the positive, which is such a shame, because then it's just a blur moment. Because if you don't know night, you don't know day.
No, exactly. Yeah.
It's the people who stay in their comfort zones, isn't it? It's just comfortable, as you said. They avoid feeling those uneasiness or uncomfortable or nervous.
Yeah.
But that's part of living, right?
Yeah,
feeling emotions. Without that, there's really nothing.
Yeah.
And then when change happens, then that's unplanned, people can cope even less, because as we said before, some changes we can plan for and embrace, but other changes just happen out of our control. So then some things will happen inevitably, and people then struggle because they're not used to change. They're not used to the emotions and coping.
Yes, and as we head into September, there's going to be more changes up ahead. So there is a strong possibility there will be a part 2 to the session.
We're always up for change.
Yes. So thank you again for joining us today. We really, really enjoyed this chat as always. So any last minute words, ladies? Nothing more?
See change as an adventure, embrace it,
Yeah.
And as I mentioned earlier, change shakes us up to where we're meant to be. So see change as the positive, that, whether it's like with a career or where you're meant to live or who you're with, just see that change as, a positive.
Yeah. And just not be afraid to make those course corrections. If it's not working, then don't be afraid to change direction.
Love that phrase, course correction.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you so much, and see you next time.
See you next
time. Okay, thanks everyone. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.